She married me for money. But I made sure she regretted it. I should have known it wasn't love when she said yes before I even finished asking the question. Most people cry or at least take a breath before agreeing to spend their life with someone. She didn't. She smiled like she'd been waiting for it, like she'd finally won something. Back then, I thought I was just lucky. That I'd found someone beautiful, charming, supportive, someone who really saw me for who I was, not just what I had. But now? Now I know better. When we first met, I had just come out of a rough patch. A long-term relationship had ended, my business had gone through some serious struggles, and I wasn't in the best place emotionally. I'd kept a small circle, stayed focused, and was slowly rebuilding. Then she appeared like something out of a movie. Confident, stunning, magnetic. The kind of woman who walks into a room and makes everyone forget what they were talking about. And she noticed me. Or at least, she pretended to. At first, everything felt too good to be true. She laughed at my jokes, asked about my goals, said all the right things. She didn't even seem interested in the fact that I owned a company. In fact, she acted surprised when she found out. That's what made me trust her. She wasn't like the others. Or so I thought. We dated for 6 months before I proposed. My friends said it was fast, my parents raised an eyebrow, but I didn't care. I felt like I'd finally found peace, someone who wasn't with me for my name, my income, or my reputation. The wedding was perfect. Classy, elegant, just the way she wanted it. I spared no expense, and she didn't hold back on the planning. I remember thinking she must really care about this. Every detail had to be flawless, the flowers, the venue, the dress, the food. She even cried during her vows, which I later realized were copied from a wedding blog. But in that moment, I believed every word. I believed the tears. I believed her. Then came the honeymoon. That's when the mask started slipping. It was subtle at first. She was distracted, always on her phone. She'd disappear for hours at the spa, barely talk to me at dinner, and when I brought it up, she'd smile and say, "You worry too much. Just enjoy this." I tried. I really did. I convinced myself she was just overwhelmed, adjusting to married life, maybe feeling pressure. I didn't want to start our new life with fights or accusations. But when we got home, things didn't get better. They got colder. She stopped asking how my day was. Stopped laughing at my jokes. Intimacy became rare, and when it happened, it felt empty. Like checking off a task. She started going out more, girls' nights, weekend trips, spa retreats. All paid for by me, of course. I didn't mind at first. I wanted her to be happy. But it became obvious she was living her best life alone. I was more like her personal banker than her husband. Still, I didn't want to believe what I was beginning to see. I thought maybe I was just insecure, maybe I was overthinking. Until I found the credit card statements. Thousands spent at designer stores, luxury salons, and places I'd never even heard of. I confronted her, asked what was going on, and she flipped it back on me, said I was trying to control her, that I didn't trust her, that I was insecure because she was more social than me. And I believed her. Again. But the final blow came a few months later. She left her tablet open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping, I walked in, saw a message pop up and froze. It was from someone saved under a fake name, but the conversation was anything but fake. "Don't worry," she wrote. "I'll have the account access soon. Once the prenup loophole kicks in, we're good." There was more. Talk about finally getting the payout, about acting sweet until she had what she needed. My hands were shaking. My chest felt like it was collapsing. All this time, all the doubts, the distance, the gut feeling I kept ignoring, it was real. She married me for money. And now she was planning to leave me once she got enough of it. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat at the dining table, staring at the walls, going over every moment we'd shared. And with every memory, every fake smile, every lie she told, something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Not with anger. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg her to stay. No. I was going to play the game. Because if she wanted money, she was about to find out what it meant to marry someone smarter than she thought. And when I was done, she'd walk away with nothing, not even her pride. The next morning, I acted like everything was fine. I kissed her on the forehead, made her coffee, even complimented her new earrings, the ones I'd unknowingly paid for. She smiled, completely unaware that I now knew the truth. That was the moment I realized just how deep the act ran. She could lie right to my face, look me in the eyes with that soft voice, and pretend we were still in love. It made my skin crawl. But I didn't flinch. I couldn't. Because from that day on, I had a mission, and I wasn't going to stop until it was done. She wanted a payout? I was going to make sure she got nothing but regret. I started by meeting with my lawyer. Quietly, discreetly. I didn't want any noise, no obvious signs. I told him everything I'd found, the messages, the spending, the manipulation. The original prenup we signed before the wedding wasn't airtight. I'd been in love, too trusting. But there were clauses. Small ones. Conditions that could be activated in the event of fraud, financial misconduct, or adultery. We started going through them one by one. Building a case. Lining up documents, records, screenshots. The lawyer said if I played the smart, I could walk away clean, maybe even reclaim some of what she'd already taken. But it would take time. And patience. Two things I wasn't exactly known for. But this time I was fully committed. Back home, I began observing everything. I started copying her messages from devices she left open. I recorded conversations. I kept receipts. I even hired a private investigator, someone who could follow her, gather proof of where she went, who she met, and what she was really doing on all those girls' nights she loved to take. And it didn't take long. Within 2 weeks, I had photos of her with another man. Not just talking, not just friendly, holding hands, kissing, going into a hotel together. That was the final piece I needed. She wasn't just emotionally gone, she was cheating. And now I had the evidence. But again, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I kept smiling. I kept pretending. I let her keep spending my money, planning trips, telling friends how supportive her husband was. And while she did that, I was shifting accounts, locking things down, separating business from personal. Every dollar I could legally protect, I moved. Every access she had, I changed. Quietly. Smoothly. Like nothing was happening. Because I knew the more convinced she was that I was still clueless, the more reckless she'd become. And she didn't disappoint. She started getting bolder. Ordering designer bags with my card, setting up business ventures in her name, trying to make moves behind my back. She even asked about adjusting our will, said we should be thinking about the future. I almost laughed. But I just nodded and said she was right. Let's talk to someone about it, I told her. And then I called my lawyer again. We adjusted everything. Every document. Every account. Every point of vulnerability. We left nothing open. By the 3rd month, she thought she had it all. I could see it in the way she moved. The way she talked. She treated me like a placeholder, a walking wallet she only needed to tolerate a little longer. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was a countdown. But what she didn't know was that I was counting too. Counting the days until I'd put everything in place. Counting the nights I stayed up making sure every piece of evidence was backed up. Counting how long I had to keep pretending that I still believed she loved me. Then finally the day came. I woke up, made her breakfast, and told her I was heading into the office for a long day of meetings. She kissed me on the cheek and said she might go shopping later. I nodded, walked out the door, and drove straight to my lawyer's office. Everything was ready. Papers printed. Evidence organized. Strategy locked in. We filed for divorce that afternoon. But not just any divorce, a full legal assault. Fraud. Infidelity. Financial deception. The works. The moment she was served, her whole world would change. She thought she was playing me, but I had flipped the script. And I couldn't wait to see the look on her face when she realized the game was over. I didn't go home that night. I stayed in a hotel, kept my phone off. I didn't need the noise. I wanted her to feel the silence first, that creeping panic when things don't go as planned. The papers would arrive by morning. Delivered straight to her hands. And when they did, everything she thought she built would begin to crumble. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I was angry. But because she earned every bit of what was coming. I gave her trust, love, loyalty, and she gave me lies. She tried to marry into wealth, to take what wasn't hers, to walk away rich and smug. But she forgot one thing: I didn't get where I am by being stupid. She thought I was the fool. But I was just getting started. When the papers were delivered, I imagined she would scream, throw something, maybe even call me in a rage demanding to know how I could do this to her. But what actually happened was even better. She went silent. No calls. No messages. No drama, just a pause. Like she was trying to figure out how it all went so wrong so fast. I knew her well enough to guess that she spent the first few hours flipping through the documents, scanning for anything she could use to manipulate the situation, looking for a weakness in my case, a loophole she could exploit. But there wasn't one. Everything was airtight. The evidence of her cheating, the financial records, the messages, all of it had been neatly included, categorized, and backed by legal precedent. There was no wiggle room, no chance she could twist the narrative. She was caught, and she knew it. Later that evening, I received the first message. Just 4 words: "Can we talk, please?" I didn't answer. I had nothing to say that hadn't already been said with the contents of the divorce packet. A few hours later, another message: "I think you're making a mistake." No acknowledgement of what she did. No apology. Just a pathetic attempt to shift the blame. She still believed she could talk her way out of it. That's what manipulators do. When the lies no longer work, they start pretending they're the ones being hurt. I knew better. I stayed silent. The next day, she showed up at my office. I watched her walk in through the glass doors, dressed like she was going to brunch, not facing the consequences of everything she'd done. She tried to act composed, but I saw the cracks. Her eyes were red, her smile forced, her movements a little too rehearsed. My assistant buzzed me to say she was there. I told her to send her away. And she did. Just like that. No audience. No confrontation. No dramatic speech. I didn't owe her that. She had her chance to speak the truth months ago and chose to play a game instead. That window had closed. She called me that night. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was shaky, switching between desperate and angry in a matter of seconds. She said I was throwing everything away, that she didn't mean for things to go this far, that we could work through it if I was willing to forgive. And then, when the sympathy card failed, she switched to threats, said she'd tell everyone I was controlling, that I manipulated her, that I planned this from the start. The irony was almost laughable. She was so used to spinning stories, she didn't realize I had no interest in defending myself. I didn't need to. The truth was already out there, written in ink, signed by a notary, and ready for court. What followed over the next few weeks was a slow but steady collapse of everything she'd tried to build. Her attempts to claim partial ownership of my company failed. I'd legally separated it from our marriage assets months before. Her claims for spousal support were denied, thanks to the infidelity clause and the mountain of evidence I had provided. She tried to get sympathy from friends, but by then most of them had seen the truth. Screenshots don't lie. Bank statements don't lie. Hotel camera footage doesn't lie. And people who knew me, who had seen how much I gave her, how hard I tried to make things work, didn't buy her act anymore. The web she'd woven was unraveling, and she was getting caught in every thread. I wish I could say I felt satisfied watching it all fall apart. I didn't. Not really. What I felt was more like relief. Like I had been holding my breath for months, maybe years, and could finally exhale. The version of her I fell in love with never really existed. She had been performing from day one, playing the long game, seeing me as a means to an end. And once I accepted that truth, everything else became easier. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. She eventually moved out of the house. Took her things, or at least the ones she was legally allowed to take, and left. No goodbye. No closure. Just silence. And that was fine with me. I didn't need an ending speech or a dramatic confrontation. The ending had already happened the moment she chose greed over love, lies over loyalty. She walked out of my life the same way she entered it, acting. Only this time, the audience was gone and the curtain had already dropped. I took some time for myself after that. No dating. No distractions. I focused on my business, on my family, on rebuilding the pieces of me she tried to break. It wasn't easy. Trust takes time to rebuild, especially when it's been shattered by someone you thought would protect it. But piece by piece I got there. And I promised myself something. I would never ignore red flags again. I would never let charm override truth. And I would never ever let someone else write my story for me. Because the cost of ignoring your instincts is far greater than the pain of walking away, and I had paid that price once. Never again. In the months that followed, life took on a different rhythm. The quiet that used to feel lonely now felt peaceful. Mornings weren't filled with tension or cold silence. Nights weren't spent wondering where she was or who she was with. I could finally focus, think clearly, make decisions without second-guessing myself. It was like waking up from a long dream where I kept pretending things were fine just to avoid admitting they weren't. The reality of everything she'd done hit me in waves. Sometimes I'd catch myself remembering how she used to look at me across the dinner table, how she laughed at my jokes, how she called me her everything. And then I'd remember what she wrote in those messages to her lover, how I was a safe investment, how she just needed to play along a little longer to secure her future. Those words cut deeper than anything else. Not because they were cruel, but because they were calculated. She had planned it all. I wasn't her husband. I was a stepping stone. A bank account with a name. But the more time passed, the more distant those memories became. The house that once felt haunted by her presence slowly became mine again. I renovated rooms. I changed the furniture. I got rid of every trace of her, not out of spite, but because I needed space to breathe. I even started hosting dinners again, inviting over close friends who stuck by me when things got ugly. We laughed, shared stories, even joked about how I dodged a financial bullet the size of a missile. It felt good. It felt like life was starting again. And in a strange way, people started seeing me differently too. Some reached out just to say they admired how I handled everything. Others wanted advice, telling me they were in situations that felt eerily similar. I listened. I didn't pretend to have all the answers, but I knew how it felt to question your own reality, to feel like maybe you were the crazy one. That kind of manipulation is subtle, poisonous. And the worst part is, when you're in it, you think love is supposed to hurt sometimes. That's the lie we're taught, that if it's hard, it's real. But real love doesn't make you feel small. It doesn't leave you guessing. It doesn't drain you. I started journaling, writing down everything, not just what happened, but how I felt about it, what I learned from it, what I would never allow again. And somewhere in those late-night writing sessions, I found the closure I thought she owed me. Turns out, closure doesn't come from the other person. It comes when you stop waiting for them to care and start caring for yourself again. I didn't need her to apologize or admit what she did. Her silence was enough. It spoke louder than any excuse could. Of course, she tried to circle back. They always do. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, she reached out again. A simple message, "Hope you're doing okay." No context. No explanation. Just fishing for a reaction. I stared at it for a long time, debating whether to respond. Not out of longing, but curiosity. Did she really think I'd forgotten? That I'd somehow missed her? That after all the lies, manipulation, and betrayal, I would want to reopen that door? I didn't reply. I deleted the message and blocked the number. Not out of bitterness, out of peace. Because the best revenge isn't anger or payback. It's indifference. It's living a life so full, so honest, so rich in real connection that they no longer have a place in it. And that's exactly what I did. I poured myself into things that mattered, people who had always been there for me, goals I had put off, passions I'd forgotten. I took trips I never had time for. I spent weekends with family, laughed without the weight of pretending. I even started dating again, slowly, cautiously. But this time, with my eyes wide open. No blind trust. No falling for masks. Just honest connection built on transparency and mutual respect. And it felt different. Healthier. Real. There's a kind of strength that comes from surviving a betrayal like that, not just surviving, but thriving afterward. You learn to listen to your gut. You learn to recognize red flags before they become disasters. You learn how to protect your peace without apologizing for it. And most importantly, you learn your worth. Not the kind of worth someone gives you when they choose to love you, the kind you carry even when no one else sees it. The kind that says, "I am enough and I don't need to be used to feel valuable." I looked back one last time, not because I missed her, but because I wanted to make sure I had truly moved on. And I had. There was no anger, no pain, no unfinished thoughts. Just a quiet understanding that sometimes the wrong people come into your life to teach you the right lessons. She thought she married me for my money. But what she really did was hand me the greatest gift she never intended to give: freedom. Freedom to start over. Freedom to be me again. And the clarity to never let someone like her into my life again. Time has a strange way of healing you in layers. Some wounds close quickly, others take longer, buried beneath pride, confusion, and the shame of letting yourself be fooled. But with each passing day, I felt stronger. Not just because the chaos was over, but because I had finally stopped blaming myself. That was the last chain I had to break. For months, even after the truth was clear, there was the small voice in the back of my mind whispering, maybe if you'd paid more attention, maybe if you hadn't trusted so easily, maybe if you'd done something different, she wouldn't have used you. But the truth is, being a good person isn't a flaw. Believing in someone you love isn't a weakness. The shame doesn't belong to the person who gives trust, it belongs to the one who betrays it. And once I fully understood that, I felt free in a way I hadn't in years. I kept building. Quietly, consistently. My business grew. My energy came back. I started waking up with motivation again instead of anxiety. Even the little things started to feel good: brewing coffee, going for walks, cooking my own dinner without someone criticizing it. There was peace in the silence. And I realized how much noise she had brought into my life. Not the loud kind, but the draining kind: constant stress, subtle manipulations, emotional games. It made me wonder how many people are stuck in relationships like that, too afraid to admit they're being used, too scared to start over. I've been there. I know how it feels. You tell yourself it'll get better. You lower your standards 1 inch at a time until you're living in a life that doesn't even look like yours anymore. But starting over is never as scary as staying where you're being slowly broken. A year after the divorce, I got a letter. A real one. Handwritten. I almost didn't recognize the name on the envelope. It was her. I stood there staring at it for a long time, wondering if I should open it, throw it away, burn it, or send it back unopened. Curiosity won. I opened it. Inside was 3 pages of what I guess she thought was closure. She talked about how she'd been reflecting, how she was in therapy now, how she realized she had hurt people, not just me, but herself. She said she never meant to fall out of love, that things got complicated, that she made mistakes. She didn't apologize directly. There was no, "I'm sorry," that sounded like she really meant it. Just a lot of vague admissions and carefully chosen words. She said she hoped I was happy, that she heard I was doing well, that she missed what we had. I folded the letter and put it away in a drawer I rarely open. I didn't write back. There was nothing left to say. I didn't hate her. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't even want her to feel what I had felt because honestly, I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anyone. But I also didn't owe her anything. Not my attention, not my forgiveness, not a piece of the life I had rebuilt from the ground up. That chapter was closed. Permanently. One night, I was sitting with a few friends and someone asked, "If you could go back and undo it all, would you?" It was the first time I didn't have to think about the answer. No, I wouldn't undo it. Not because I enjoyed the pain. Not because I wanted to be betrayed. But because that experience showed me who I really was. It stripped everything fake away. It forced me to face myself, to rebuild not just my life, but my character, my strength, my values. And I like the man I've become. I trust him. He doesn't let charm blind him. He doesn't ignore his instincts. He protects his peace and knows his worth. That man was born out of fire. And for that, I'm grateful. So if you're listening to this, if you're going through something similar, or still healing from something like this, let me say this to you directly. You're not weak for loving someone who didn't deserve it. You're not foolish for giving them a chance. You're human. And now you have a chance to grow stronger, smarter, wiser. Don't waste your pain. Let it teach you. Let it shape you. And when you're ready, let it go. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it resonated with you, if you've ever been through something like this, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Let's talk, let's support each other. And if you want more real, raw stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. It means more than you know. Until next time, take care of your heart and never settle for less than the respect you deserve.